You can't escape from yourself.
The Substance takes body horror, vanity, and Hollywood's obsession with youth and cranks them up to 11. Directed by Coralie Farge, this satirical horror is both a biting commentary on the darker sides of the entertainment industry and a bloody, nightmarish spectacle. The movie stars Demi playing Elisabeth Sparkle, an aging aerobics star clinging to the last shreds of her fading fame. In a world where youth is currency and wrinkles are career killers, Elisabeth makes a desperate choice. She injects herself with a mysterious black market serum that promises to restore her youth. But, as you'd expect, there's a catch. The Substance doesn't just give her a facelift, it creates a younger, more vibrant version of herself played by Margaret Qualley. And from here, things spiral into a chaotic, gruesome battle between vanity, self-destruction, and the impossible standards of beauty imposed by Hollywood. Farge also takes it much further, with nods to Cronenberg's infamous body horror and an acidic satire of the entertainment industry. The Substance is an unrelenting examination of the way women are discarded when they're no longer deemed useful in the eyes of the media machine. But what really sets it apart is how it refuses to pull any punches. It doesn't just tiptoe around the edges of body horror, it dives right in. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, and it's undeniably effective. However, beneath the blood and gore, there's a sharp, intelligent story being told about the lengths people will go to in order to stay relevant. After the recent slop we've had at the movies, The Substance was a refreshing, ferocious, thought-provoking exploration of the corrupting nature of fame, the unattainable standards of beauty, and the self-destructive spiral of trying to turn back time. Hey guys, what's happening? Nihat here with Film Comics Explained, and in this breakdown and review, we'll dig deep into the film's sharp satire, its grotesque body horror, and why Demi Moore's performance might just be the best thing she's done in years. The Substance kicks off with a visually arresting scene, an egg yolk injected with a strange green liquid, splitting and duplicating itself. The symbolism is hard to miss as the film transitions to the Hollywood Walk of Fame, zooming in on the star of Elisabeth Sparkle. It's a neat visual trick, showing how time fades once bright celebrities into mere footnotes. Fans swarm around her star in the beginning, but soon she's nothing more than an afterthought. This clever corrosion reflects Elisabeth's own decline, perfectly setting the tone for the central theme. Elisabeth is a former A-list celebrity, now reduced to hosting a TV aerobics show in a desperate attempt to stay relevant. She's the perfect embodiment of Hollywood's obsession with youth and beauty, and the industry's ruthless discarding of women once they hit a certain age. At 50, Elisabeth is still fit, still beautiful, but she's old. It doesn't matter how good she is at her job, the entertainment machine has decided she's past her prime. In a telling moment, she sneaks into the men's bathroom when she can't access the women's, only to overhear the network president Harvey discussing how she's now too old for the job at 50. Played with slimy perfection by Dennis Quaid, Harvey embodies everything rotten about the entertainment industry.
Did you know that a woman's fertility starts to decrease about the age of 25?
How old is Jennifer? You're gonna get busy.
Every time he's on screen, you can practically feel the sleaze dripping off him. Quaid nails the role, turning Harvey into a caricature of the exploitative producer archetype, complete with gross eating habits and a total lack of empathy. Later over lunch, where Harvey disgustingly stuffs his face with shrimp, he bluntly fires Elisabeth. This is the harsh reality of Hollywood, chewing up stars and spitting them out when they lose their sparkle, as it were. Driving home from this devastating meeting, Elisabeth becomes distracted seeing her billboard being taken down, and in a panic, she crashes her car. At the hospital, she breaks down as a nurse gives her a checkup and subtly slips a flash drive into her jacket, calling her a perfect candidate for something. On her way out, Elisabeth has a chance encounter with Fred, a high school admirer who remembers her as the most beautiful woman in the world, though his overly eager attitude makes it clear his feelings haven't evolved since then. It's a sad reflection of her situation. She's adored for what she was, not for who she is now.
You haven't changed a bit. You're still the most beautiful girl in the whole wide world.
Back home, she watches the contents of the flash drive, which turns out to be an advertisement for something called The Substance. This mysterious voiceover explains that this serum can turn someone into a younger, better version of themselves, with one catch. The user must switch between their young and old bodies every 7 days. Initially, Elisabeth dismisses the idea, but loneliness and the yearning for her former glory get the best of her, and so she calls the number, receives a shady address, and is told to provide her own. Elisabeth then heads to a hidden building down a dark alley and retrieves the substance from a deposit box. She returns home and, in a desperate move, injects herself with the green fluid. Elisabeth's character is driven by fear. Fear of aging, fear of becoming irrelevant, fear of being forgotten, and that fear pushes her into taking the substance, which promises to restore her youth, but ends up destroying her in every way imaginable, as we're about to find out. Moore plays her with a mixture of desperation and defiance, making Elisabeth both sympathetic and deeply flawed. She's trying to hold on to the past, but in doing so, she's losing herself. The consequences are immediate and gruesome. She collapses in pain as a massive slit opens on her back, and out emerges a younger, beautiful woman. This new version of Elisabeth, now calling herself Sue, sews up the wound and applies a stabilizing serum to keep them balanced. Sue doesn't waste any time and heads straight to the network, where she effortlessly wins Harvey over. The youth, beauty, and energy that Sue exudes is everything Elisabeth used to have, and now Sue is reaping the benefits.
Thank you so much, everybody. I'll see you next week, and in the meantime, take care of yourself.
Played by Margaret Qualley, Sue is everything Elisabeth wishes she could be again. Young, beautiful, and full of energy. But don't be fooled, Sue isn't just a carbon copy of Elisabeth. She's her own person, with her own ambitions and desires. From the moment she's born, Sue takes control of her own destiny. She's opportunistic, quickly taking over Elisabeth's career and thriving in the limelight.
You're hired.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sue, and it's time to pump it up.
Sue represents the ultimate Hollywood dream, the perfect, marketable, desirable woman who's willing to play the game to get ahead. But as the film progresses, we see that her youth and beauty come at a cost. She's effectively locked in a parasitic relationship with Elisabeth, needing her to survive, but also resenting her for holding her back. Qualley plays Sue with a mix of charm and cold ambition, making her both likable and terrifying. She's what Hollywood wants, young and flawless, but the film cleverly shows how that comes with its own horrors.
I'm Sue.
During her first week, Sue revels in the attention, securing her place as the network's new star. But when her time is up and she returns to being Elisabeth, the contrast is staggering. Elisabeth's life is dull, reduced to merely cleaning out her belongings and watching TV. Sue, however, is thriving. She gets her fitness show picked up full-time, and Harvey, clearly smitten, agrees to work around her peculiar schedule.
Gorgeous. With a pure heart. People are gonna love that.
Sue even goes as far as to build a secret compartment in the bathroom to hide Elisabeth's unconscious body during their body swap. Sue's reckless choices escalate as she pushes the limits of her new life. With only hours left before she's supposed to switch back, she brings a guy named Troy back home. However, as time runs out, her body betrays her, and a sudden nosebleed signals that her stint as Sue is over. Desperate for more time, she resorts to recycling a stabilizer tube and extracts additional fluid from Elisabeth's body, all just to spend one more night with Troy. When Elisabeth finally wakes up, the consequences are immediate and brutal. Her right hand looks aged and decayed. In a panic, she calls the number for the substance, only to receive a cold, matter-of-fact response. The effects are irreversible, and she must adhere to the balance. The most disturbing part, they remind her that Sue isn't a separate person. Sue is still Elisabeth.
Remember, there is no she and you. You are one. Respect the balance, and you won't have any more inconveniences.
While technically not a character, the substance is a driving force behind everything, a mysterious serum that promises youth but delivers chaos. In true sci-fi horror fashion, it's the ultimate cautionary tale about the dangers of trying to cheat time. Kind of reminiscent of the monkey's paw, the substance is a drug that gives you a taste of what you want, but the price is steep. It splits Elisabeth into two people, allowing her to experience youth again through Sue, but it also fractures her sense of self, leaving her more lost than before. It isn't just a plot device, it's a metaphor for Hollywood's obsession with eternal youth, and the lengths people will go to in order to hold on to it.
Younger, more beautiful, more perfect. One single injection unlocks your DNA. This is simply a better version of yourself.
People are just people. I have to give people what they want, and people always ask for something new.
So Elisabeth gets her refill kit and heads to a diner, where she encounters a strange old man who shares a birthmark identical to the nurse who first introduced her to the substance. He unnervingly warns her about the dangers of the younger self, hinting that Sue might be eating away at her. Horrified by the encounter, Elisabeth rushes out, only to be confronted by a furious Troy picking up his motorcycle and berating her. One of the film's key mysteries is the identity of the organization behind the substance. The serum is delivered through anonymous means, a dead drop in downtown LA, phone calls and messages from unseen voices. The inventor of the serum remains a shadowy figure, and Elisabeth never learns who's really pulling the strings. But the brilliance of the film is that the organization isn't painted as the villain. They don't try to manipulate Elisabeth, they simply offer her a choice.
If you are not satisfied, you can put an end to the experience and go back to being just you. Would you like to stop?
When Elisabeth considers abandoning the process altogether, the organization bluntly explains the rules, but leaves the decision entirely in her hands. The movie makes it clear, Elisabeth and Sue's self-destruction is a result of their own choices, not outside interference. Desperate for some normalcy and some form of connection, Elisabeth decides to call Fred and accept his long-standing dinner invitation. Of course he's thrilled, quickly making a reservation. But as she gets ready, she spots a billboard of Sue through the window, which triggers her spiral of insecurity. Retreating to the bathroom, she obsessively removes and reapplies makeup, struggling with her bitterness and frustration until she finally gives up on the date, ghosting Fred without a word. Things take an even stranger turn during a taping of Sue's show. Sue struggles through a bad take, feeling something unsettling against her back. Paranoid and ashamed, she avoids the playback and rushes to the bathroom, where she discovers a disturbing lump traveling up her leg. To her horror, she pushes a fully formed chicken leg out of her belly button. Meanwhile, her frustrations mount as she calls the number to complain about Elisabeth's binge eating and drinking, which is making her life more difficult. The moment encapsulates the relationship or battle between Elisabeth and Sue. They're two sides of the same person, locked in a fight for control. Elisabeth sees Sue as everything she's lost, while Sue views Elisabeth as an obstacle to her freedom and success. The dynamic between them is what drives the story forward, turning The Substance into a twisted psychological thriller, as much as it is a satirical body horror. Their relationship is tragic because, in the end, they're both doomed. Elisabeth can't accept the reality of aging, and Sue, despite her youth and beauty, is tied to an aging body she can never fully escape. The film makes it clear that neither can exist without the other, and yet they can't live in harmony. It's a brilliant metaphor for the internal conflict people experience when faced with the inevitability of aging.
It gets harder to remember that you still deserve to exist. That this part of yourself is still worth something.
Sue's career continues to rise, but the pressure mounts. She arrives at the studio to find Harvey has bigger plans. Sue has become so popular that they wanted to host a New Year's Eve special. Of course she agrees, and in her excitement, takes even more time from Elisabeth. When Elisabeth finally returns to her body, it's in a far worse state. Older, weaker, her legs barely functioning. Left without anything else to do, Elisabeth busies herself with a French cookbook Harvey had given her as a backhanded gift, while seething with jealousy as she watches Sue mock her old program on a talk show.
You have to control yourself!
Things take a gruesome turn when Sue's frustration with Elisabeth's repulsive habits drives her to push the limits of their shared body. Over the span of 3 months, Sue relentlessly extracts stabilizing fluid from Elisabeth's decaying form, which begins to resemble a festering sore. However, her final attempt to use the fluid proves catastrophic. The serum turns necrotic, a warning sign that she's reached the end of her time in the young body. With no other option, Sue contacts the organization, only to be told that the stabilizing fluid will reset once she returns to Elisabeth's body. Reluctantly, she switches back, but what awaits her is a monstrous, hunchback version of Elisabeth, an abomination of what she once was.
Who's this?
Leave me alone!
In desperation, Elisabeth decides to terminate the substance, knowing that while it won't reverse the horrifying physical changes, it will at least allow her to live out the rest of her days without the torment of switching bodies. Throughout the film, the mysterious organization encourages Elisabeth to view Sue as merely as an extension of herself. But as the story unfolds, Elisabeth and Sue come to view each other as bitter rivals, each vying for control over the same life. And so, now armed with a syringe of black fluid meant to destroy Sue, she hesitates mid-injection and pulls away, unable to kill her. You see, Elisabeth is unable to destroy Sue because her own conflicted ego stops her from fully going through with it. However, Sue doesn't share her mercy. Waking to find herself face to face with her older self, Sue brutally attacks her, finishing her off in a violent, rage-fueled murder. Killing Elisabeth is her way of seizing complete control, but in doing so, she seals her own doom. Without Elisabeth to maintain the stabilizing serum, Sue's body begins to deteriorate rapidly. Symbolically, this moment represents the ultimate loss of self-worth and control. Sue's youthful ego literally kills her real self, becoming the very monster she feared. Sue prepares for the New Year's Eve special at the network, but her body begins to fall apart. Her teeth drop out, fingernails peel away, and her ear even slides off. Desperate, she returns home and injects herself with what is left of the activator fluid, hoping to restore her youth. Instead, it spawns a hideous abomination known as Monstro Elisabeth, a fusion of limbs, teeth, and Elisabeth's face horrifically grafted onto its back. Monstro, wearing Sue's dress and carrying a poster of Elisabeth's face taped to its body, stumbles into the New Year's Eve broadcast. As it approaches the stage, the face falls off, revealing its monstrous visage to the horrified audience.
I'm with you all, so what?
In a desperate bid to stop the creature, the audience attack Monstro, smashing its head. But the head regenerates, and as its arm falls off, it sprays the crowd in a fountain of blood. The final act sees Monstro stumble out of the studio before collapsing into a fleshy mass. From the wreckage, the original face of Elisabeth emerges, and she crawls towards her Hollywood Walk of Fame star, beaming with happiness as she imagines sparkles raining down on her. But the moment is fleeting. She dissolves into a puddle of goo, and by morning, a floor scrubber washes away any trace of her existence. The Substance is a dark commentary on self-destruction in the pursuit of youth. Elisabeth, once a beloved star, is cast aside due to her age, despite her decades of success. But it isn't Harvey or the serum that ultimately destroy Elisabeth. It's her own self-doubt, insecurity, and inability to see her worth. She sacrifices inner peace and self-acceptance, choosing instead to chase external validation, and Sue's rise only deepens her self-loathing. As Sue's popularity grows, Elisabeth watches in envy and despair, unable to reconcile her former self with the aging woman she's become. This internal struggle becomes the film's most powerful theme, how the pursuit of eternal youth is ultimately a war against oneself. The dynamic between Elisabeth and Sue is brilliantly complex, with each feeding off the other's insecurities. The self-worth of Elisabeth is entirely tied to her appearance, while Sue, born out of the desperation of Elisabeth, represents everything she used to be but can no longer maintain. What starts as a simple desire to regain youth spirals into a horrifying struggle for survival, as the two versions of the same woman fight for control over a single life. Yes, it is a dark comedy about the entertainment industry's superficiality, but at its core, it's a tragedy about ambition and the cost of trying to meet impossible expectations. Demi Moore delivers a career-defining performance as Elisabeth Sparkle, who's desperately clinging to the last shreds of her fame, while Margaret Qualley's portrayal of Sue, the younger, more vibrant version of Elisabeth, perfectly captures the narcissistic allure of youth.
Are you sure? Once you stop, you can't go back. You will simply remain on your own.
I can't do this. I need you. I hate myself.
Coralie Faget's The Substance is a bold and shocking exploration of the entertainment industry's obsession with youth and beauty. From the moment it starts, the film grabs you with its visceral intensity, building towards a final 40 minutes that are a whirlwind of blood, body horror, and satire. The pacing, driven by Faget's precision editing, is top-notch, keeping the energy electric and the audience glued to the screen, with the director not shy about embracing horror tropes. There are clear nods to Cronenberg's body horror classics, while the intense psychological unraveling echoes De Palma's Carrie. Musically, the film riffs off Hitchcock's Vertigo and Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, crafting an atmosphere that keeps you on edge. Faget escalates the horror, but she does so without losing the film's satirical edge, as Sue's refusal to relinquish her time as the younger self leads to monstrous physical deformities, turning the film into a Cronenbergian nightmare. The visual style becomes more chaotic as the story unravels, with scenes that are both terrifying and absurdly comical in their extremity. The use of practical effects in these scenes is both revolting and mesmerizing, driving home the film's themes in a way that lingers long after the credits roll. Special effects artist Pierre Persin revealed that about 70 to 80% of what's seen on screen was achieved without CGI. Using everything from traditional sculptures to computer-generated designs, the team landed on a creature that they all loved, a monstrosity with puncture holes and multiple spines, as if Sue had been tossed into a blender and scrambled into something barely human. Due to the time crunch, Persin subcontracted the creation of Monstro's suit to a UK company, producing 2 full suits, one for the stunt double and a half suit for Margaret Qualley to wear in the close-up shots. The suit itself featured an outrageous array of practical effects, including a fire hose-like rig that sprayed blood all over the audience during the climactic scene, while the makeup process for Demi Moore's transformation into the decaying Elisabeth took anywhere from 45 minutes to 6.5 hours, with the most complex applications reserved for scenes where she was fully aged. With the help of the amazing practical effects, the final scenes of The Substance leave a powerful, unsettling impression. What makes The Substance truly memorable is how it's not just a tale of vanity or the perils of chasing eternal youth, but a larger reflection on the brutal nature of the entertainment industry.
So smile! Pretty girls should always smile!
It's a savage indictment of Hollywood, wrapped in a blood-soaked, visually stunning package, and I highly recommend that you guys give it a shot.
You do know that we're not exactly from the same generation.
So what?
Well, that's all for today, folks.